So there's always been this argument of whether a killer that can disguise as a survivor can be put into DVD, and of course the obvious answer is Swift will destroy that. But what if I was to tell you that it could potentially be a way around that? Hear me out. So let's say the killer's power is simple, right? The killer can transform into a survivor, literally play as a survivor, like if you're playing play as a survivor the mode, but it's with a very huge twist. So of course, just to make things fair, you can only be a survivor for a limited amount of time. During this process, when you vote windows, the windows will be blocked, just like Hex crowd control. This will make it so you can make being a survivor aggressive in a way. Let's say if a survivor is looping the killer at Shack, the killer can transform into a survivor, loop that window to block it off, then transform back to its killer form to then pursue the survivor, and that window will be closed for a certain amount of time. The killer in survival mode can also drop down pallets, which meanwhile the killer can break. This will be very good on maps like the game that has a lot of pallets, but of course you have to balance that out in some shape or form. Like, you can't just be a survivor and then place down, all the pallets just for the killer to break them all. So I came up with the idea that, so maybe when you, let's say, place down the pallet, the time you're a survivor will go down tremendously. So let's say you just became a survivor, the killer just transformed into a survivor. If you was to run and drop down the pallet, that will take out a chunk of time of you using your time to be that survivor, so it kind of balance things out. That, and say if the killer was to just transform into a survivor and wanted to place all the pallets down, the pallets that the killer playing as a survivor placed down, oh my god, this is confusing, for pallets that have been knocked down by the killer, if those pallets aren't destroyed within a certain time, they will just go back up again by the entity's hand, or something like that, just to make it fair, because you don't want to leave all those pallets down just for the killer to break them all. It's not like a survivor is going to be carrying enemies necessary randomly, unless they know they're going to face that type of killer, you know what I'm trying to say. I also came up with this item thing that could work for the aggressive style. So basically the killer can interact with chests or something like that, right? Or just items in general, and the killer can absorb these items. So say like if the killer was to absorb a med kit or something like that, right? Let's say a med kit. When the killer absorbs that med kit as a survivor, when the killer transforms back to its killer form and injures a survivor, that survivor that tries to heal will become broken. So basically the items you absorb as the killer does the opposite for the survivor. So if the killer was to absorb the med kit, the survivor was to be healed or heal themselves, they will become broken for a certain amount of time. If he was to absorb a toolbox and they try to repair a generator, it will just slow it down. Toolbox won't sabotage, flashlights won't flash, you know what I'm saying, firecrackers won't do his thing, explode, I guess. You get the idea. It will also be pretty cool if the killer could turn boon totems into hex totems. So let's say if you have, hex blood favor or something like that, right? And you run into a boon totem, when you're in your survivor form, you can interact with that boon totem and turn it into a hex totem, but only for a certain amount of time, because that is very strong. And I know you're probably thinking, shouldn't the killer be killing during all these interactions? Like, isn't the killer wasting its own time? Yeah and no, because of the fact that the interaction speed can be, maybe increased significantly for when the killer is in survivor mode. So let's say if you interacted with a chest, it'll go way faster than how a survivor normally interacts with chests, and that works for anything that the killer interacts with as a survivor. So if the killer was to interact with a generator, it'll probably regress pretty fast, or even it could kind of be like a built-in ruin. So as soon as the killer interacts with the gen for like 5 seconds and just leaves it alone, it will just start regressing on its own or something like that. You get the idea. But mind you, that's only the killer's aggressive form, so it kind of works both ways. So the killer could kind of disguise and play aggressive at the same time, so it wouldn't even matter whether the survivors are in a group or not, whether they're solo or with a Swift. They're in a solo, maybe the killer can disguise and probably creep up on survivors and deceive survivors, but if they're in a Swift, they can play aggressive and drop a lot of pallets, vault windows, you know what I'm trying to say? That's how I think that all just works. I think whatever, as long as it makes sense, it can work in DVD. Trust me, it's Dead by Daylight, bro. But hopefully this made sense. This did sound pretty confusing, but if anything, I'll comment in the comment section. Love y'all, take care, I'm gonna see you on the next one, and peace.
To the beat, y'all.
Check it out.
Come on. 1, 2. What you going?